بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم رضي الله تعالى عنه وسرد التابعين وعلماء عاملين وأئمة أربع مجتهدين ومقلديهم إلى يوم الدين وما بعد. So this is our second class pertaining to the purification of the heart from the different works of Sheikh Uthman and Fodio, or from the family of Sheikh Uthman and Fodio, or those who agree in accordance with the minhaj of Sheikh Uthman and Fodio. Taqaddamullah bi rahmatihi ameen. Just a quick recap before we move into the next section of today's class is that the recap last week we wanted to mention something that was very important, that the heart, with regards to the heart, qalb is the Arabic term for it. Qalb is something that's constantly turning. It's constantly turning back and forth, swaying back and forth. And what you have to know about your heart is that the heart is never at rest, all right? Even when you're dealing with it from a physiology and anatomy perspective, if the heart stops pumping and moving, the body goes dead. And the same thing, the heart is constantly on the move. It's always moving, right? And it's either being swayed to do evil or it's being swayed to do good. And we also mentioned some of the words of the Prophet ﷺ, where he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not concerned with the forms of the outward of the person, but rather yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala looks into the heart, right? The heart is also the king of all the limbs. The limbs are the subject. So if it is sound, then everything will be sound. If it's corrupt, then everything will be corrupt. The heart is the treasure house of the precious wealth of your aql and your ilm, your intelligence and your knowledge. And the like of this treasure is to be guarded from every sort of impurity. So you have to constantly always keep your heart, be on guard with your heart against the whispers of Shaytaan and evil thoughts. So to proceed on. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in the Quran, وَإِنَّمَا يَغْزَنَّاكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزَعُ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, because what we'll discuss today is about the waswas of Shaytaan, very short subject. Probably, we'll be finishing up very soon, inshallah. But however, it doesn't take away the length of the class doesn't take away from the potency of the message. So the first thing that we want to discuss is, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّمَا يَنزَغْنَاكَ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ نَزَعٌ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Right? If there comes to you from Shaytaan an evil suggestion, right? Allah Ta'ala, He says, نَزَعُ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. He says, Allah Ta'ala, He says, seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Right? And if one was weak, the latter part of this particular ayat should increase your belief in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah says what? إِنَّهُ هُوَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Right? So Allah Ta'ala is telling you to make dua, seek protection from Shaytan's whisper with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah Ta'ala is the hearing and the all-knowing. So, which brings me to my next point, is two other ayats I want to mention with today's class before we get into the actual class in itself. Is what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in the Quran, وَقُلْ رَبِّي أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنَ هَمَازَةِ الشَّيَاطِينِ وَأَعُوذُ بِكَ رَبِّي أَنْ يَحْضُرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says in Surah Al-Mu'mineen, ayahs 97 and 98. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He mentions in there, and He says, and say, قُلْ رَبِّي أَعُوذُ بِكَ مِنَ الْهَمَازَةِ shayateen. He says, say, "O my Lord, I seek refuge with you from the hamazati, like the pushing and pulling, pushing and pulling of shaitan, right? Hamazati, like a back and forth thing. Minan hamazati shayateen, right? From the back and forth, okay? With the shayateen or the strokes, and sometimes mean to make a call from behind, right? So this is a dua that is often used in order to seek protection from from the mischief of shaitan, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam urged the believers to recite it frequently in order to avoid the outbursts of rage or impulsiveness which are brought about by the prompting of shaitan, right? However, which causes people to lose self-control, because a lot of oftentimes, some of the worst mistakes or the certain worst statements that are mentioned is right at the onset of anger, right? At the onset of anger. And a lot of times, oftentimes, especially in our relationships, it affects us because sometimes we'll say a thing to our spouse, not articulating it properly, and it comes off. And you got to remember, we live in a society where saying something that hurts someone's feelings is like keeping it real. It's supposed to be something to boast about, which is actually the opposite with the believers, right? You want to be thoughtful about what the person says, what you say to the person, you don't want to hurt the person. This is governed by the statements of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, where he says, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wal yawmil akhir fayaqulu khayran yasmut," right? That whoever believes in Allah and the last day, let him say something, that is with kindness, saying words with kindness, aw yasmut, or be silent or remain silent. Why? Because it's all based upon the first part of the sentence, "Man kana yu'minu billahi wa yawmil akhir," right? And the one who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What does your belief have to do with what does your belief have to do with this? Believing in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah ta'ala is as-sami'. He's hearing all, that Allah Ta'ala is basira, right? That he sees all, right? So this, yawm al-akhir, these things that you do in this dunya affects your afterlife. So therefore you'll be cautious in your speech. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't tell us to lie in order to spare people's feelings, because Allah Ta'ala tells us to do what? وَقُولٍ قَوْلًا سَدِيدًا. Speak a word that's straight to the point, right? But however, you never speak words that's untactful, or words that are uncouth, or something that is going to be where you will harm your Muslim brother in the midst, right? It doesn't mean stop telling the person the truth, but it's all a matter of how you deliver that particular truth, right? In these words. But usually the onset where your callousness or your harshness comes from is usually at the onset, at the beginning of the argument, or when the anger strikes, and then usually a lot of people say things they end up regretting, like a lot of people, they go through divorces, and once they realize that the divorce is counted, despite of them saying it out of anger, then therefore it's like, oh, wait a minute, hold on, we got to go back, we need to backtrack this, we need to correct this, or we need to change this, or we need to do this and need to do that, right? So these type of things, and a lot of this comes from our hastiness with our tongue. But usually before we begin to discharge words, right, we should think about what we're about to say, right? A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Usually if there's a lot of emotion behind it, you might say the wrong thing, right? So you want to make sure that you tame the emotions, right? This is the first step of purification of the heart, is securing the heart from the waswas, right? Because when you're about to say something, Shaitan's there. Shaitan doesn't want to see brotherhood. Shaitan doesn't want to see a cohesive and working family. None of these things. Shaitan, he rather things to be broken and people to be isolated. All right, as is mentioned in narrations that the Shaitan, he loves that isolated, weak believer, right? He has his way with him. He whispers to him all types of things. He has no one or nothing to remind him of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what you're starting to find a practice with a lot of people. People are opt out. They opt out of the ummah. Like if you look at now that there's a plethora of Muslims, and there's a lot of number of people that are becoming Muslim. But however, what you're finding is that they're what we call unmasked, right? They don't belong to any particular jama'ah, or they shy away. They practice Islam on their own thing, or they search the internet looking for something that sounds, that goes in accordance with what their nafs is inclined to, right? Not so much the truth, but what their nafs is inclined to. And whatever you're looking for, you'll find it if you're looking for it, right? You want to eat haram food, although the ayah says don't eat haram food, or eat specific food, avoid this type of food, you'll still find something or somewhere in, online, and using some sort of ayat in order to explain it away that where you get what you want. People are even to the point where they use denial, right? Where they'll deny as a method. This is the method of the disbelievers. However, what you're finding Muslims now today doing that. Like some years back, there was a guy who was proclaiming to be Muslim and said, that the Quran needs to be rewritten for homosexuals. A'udhu billah. The Quran was revealed, its revelation is complete. There's no changing in that, right? So these type of things are being encouraged from the mouths and swaying the heart of the believers. If it's something that is inclining you, wants you to incline, right? Make your heart lean towards doing the wrong thing, and therefore you have to question that. Just as the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says, seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and stop the thought, right? Don't entertain it. The easiest and the fastest way to get away from the waswas of Shaytaan, right, is seeking refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we're going to go through that. We're going to mention what Sheikh Uthman and Fodio mentions about this. And the second thing is just ignore the whisper, right? Ignore the whisper. As I used last week in last week's class, I used the person who wants to eat at McDonald's or whatever the places that he loves to eat that's not halal. Ignore the calling. Ignore the crave, right? Substitute it. Even some other tips of make the thing, the thing that you love, make it to be something that's despicable, right? Most people in today's time, when they're in relationships and their relationship has ended, usually what they do is they try to find someone else to erase the person that was previously there. And this is why a lot of women, in today's time, don't observe Iddah properly, right? They usually start talking to another male before their waiting period is up before beginning a new marriage, right? And usually they use it as a method of coping, or how to move from one man to the next one, right? And thinking that that'll help them change their mind, or so on and so forth. And men do the same thing as well. And then when they find that they can't get over the person, then they want to run back to the person, and so on and so forth. The best thing, this isn't how Muslims conduct their affairs. Muslims who do this, they don't have a proper understanding of Islam. They don't have a proper understanding of Islamic relationship, when we're talking about with regards to marriage, not fornication and adultery, but relationship wise with regards to marriage. They don't know the etiquette, the ethics, how it's supposed to go, how it's not supposed to go, and so on and so forth. And that's a whole nother class in itself. So anyway, so the heart is swayed. The heart, as we mentioned in the beginning of the class, the heart, the qalb, is constantly turning. It's either being suggested to evil or it's being suggested to good. And usually if you want to go absolutely good, then you'll start to align yourself with all of those things that bring about righteousness. You'll adhere to the Quran, you'll adhere to the Sunnah of Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. You will find righteous companionship, somebody that's going to call you and direct you to that. You'll find a good scholarship that can be trusted, that's going to call you to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. When you want to do the opposite, you do all the opposite. You don't follow the Quran, you won't follow the Sunnah, you won't consult even look to either one of them for guidance. You won't find a good companion. You'll find the worst person that's going to agree with what you're swaying or what you're leaning towards, right? So anyway, Khalid ibn Walid, they said he used to, there was a time when he suffered from insomnia, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam suggested to him that he recite the following dua, right? And this is one of the du'as that you see that's often taught. أعوذ بكلمات الله التامات من غضب الله وعقابه ومن شر عباده ومن همازة الشياطين وأن يحضرون. Right? He says, which basically these words is coincide, almost absolute identical words to the ayahs, the two ayahs that we read in the beginning, starting out this explanation, right, from Surah Mu'minun. It says in translation, I seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the perfect word, from Allah ta'ala, Allah's wrath, and from his punishment, and from the evils of his slaves, and from the strokes, right, the hamazati, right, the same word again, the strokes of Shaytaan, and from that they come to me, right? So you're seeking refuge, and you're seeking Allah Ta'ala's protection. It's an overall statement, right? A'udhu bi kalimatillah. Right, I seek refuge with the perfect words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at-tammati min ghadab Allah, right, and from Allah Ta'ala's wrath, and wa iqabihi, and from his punishment, wa min sharri ibadihi, and from his evil slaves, right, the jinn from amongst the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That evil companion that you have, or that you keep, is from amongst the slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Wa min hamazati, right, hamazati shayateen, and from the whisperings, or the pushing or the swaying of Shaytaan. Wa an yahduruni, right, and from the strokes of Shaytaan, and from that which they come to me, how they come to me. So Khalid ibn Walid was advised to do this, and it cured his insomnia, right? As I mentioned about the an yahduru, and from that they come, according to the hadith in Sahih Muslim. The Prophet ﷺ reported have said that Shaytaan, he meddles in the affairs of humans, right? And he tempts them, he sways them to do evil deeds. And that this dua is the best protection against his attempts. And this Imam Qurtubi, narrates this, what we just mentioned. And then we mentioned in the ayat, in ayat 99 in Surah Al-Mu'mineen, he says, Rabbi, I'm sorry. That was I'm sorry. So anyway, so these are these words are used in order to protect you from Shaytaan, right? These are protect you from Shaytaan. So you have an idea that the whispers of Shaytaan is always constantly going to attack the heart, to sway the heart back and forth, right? But however, Shaytaan is ineffective unless he has inside intel. And the inside intel, just like with any war, you always have what they call the resurgence, or the people who are cooperating, right, with the opposition, to give them inside intel. And that inside intel within us is the nafs, right? The nafs, what we're weak for, what we call for. The Shaytaan, he whispers towards that. He plays towards that. If your vices is women, then he plays towards that. Every woman wants you. You don't see that, and so on and so forth. You have to, whatever that vice is, you have to make that vice unattractive. You have to make it unattractive. Meaning that it will not be the thing that you desire, right? When you start, it doesn't even matter how the method, you have to make it seem disgusting. If you're a person that's addicted to McDonald's chicken nuggets, you have to, in your mind, think of the what was that called, the pink slime or the white slime that they say that the chicken nuggets are made out of. That alone in itself is disgusting. I wouldn't want to eat them no more, right? So you have to think of those kind of things that to repel. I mean, the best thing to think about, the scariest thing to think about, is to think about going to the hellfire for the thing that you're desiring to do. Think about how your body can't handle the torment or the punishment that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is going to give you. Think about that. Think about how the skin will burn, and it'll grow back, and it'll burn, and it'll grow back, and there's no one that's going to save you and come take you out of the fire. Think about that, right? And think about, if you die up on kufr, that could be your eternal place of residence in the akhirah, right? Now, and we pray that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us from that. I mean, So, in the closing, I want to mention what Sheikh Uthman al-Fodio, he mentions, Taqaddam Allah bi rahmati. I mean, he says that you must purify your heart from the waswas. The waswas is the whisperings of Shaytaan. He says it's achieved by four things. Number one is to seek refuge with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from Shaytaan, and rejecting those thoughts from his from the origin, from that which originate from him, right? So just like you mentioned before, seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's the key. And oftentimes what happens is that sometimes we let our anger or whatever that impulsive reaction is push us even to the point where we'll almost be borderline into kufr by denying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, denying the ayahs of the Quran, and so on and so forth. We'll push ourselves down to that limit, right? So the second thing is he mentions is that remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with the heart and also with the tongue. Right? So dhikr is a form of protection, right? Reading the Quran, not only just reduced to just saying things, but also doing, constant behavior. The remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is also in your behavior as well. When you avoid those things that are haram and do those things that are halal and mustahab, right? These things. The third thing is reflection. The Shaykh, he says, reflection on the proofs of the people of Ahl Sunnah, right? When it comes to Aqidah, you want to take and make sure that your belief is sound, and that you're not taking it from those who left the path of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who strayed from the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So this is why he says reflection on the proofs of the people of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and these are, he said, these are not those of the philosophers or the Mu'tazila, right? And then the fourth thing he says, question those who have true knowledge of the sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And this type of person is a person where you'll see his action, right? You'll see his behavior and his speech will match each other, right? The one thing the Prophet ﷺ said in his narration that was narrated on behalf of Imam Ahmed, he said there's two things a munafiq cannot possess. That's sound knowledge, right? And good character. If you're lacking in one, is deficiency. If you're missing both, then you're a full-blown munafiq. Right? So with that, inshallah, we'll stop there. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Remember to subscribe. So encourage others to subscribe so you can keep on the updates. Check our website, masjiddanfodio.com. Donate, Cash App, PayPal. It's all on the website, inshallah. Barakallahu feekum. We thank you for attending our Tajdeed Sunnah Institute's class on purification of the heart. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.